Good morning, everyone. It's not even 5 o'clock, I don't think, in the morning, and I am up. Call me crazy. But I thought I would yammer on with you as long as I'm up. One of the jobs I have in my life is to create portraits of royalty. T-R-A-I-T-S, specifically of queens. In my building, which is a very communally based building, we have every year a day we set aside to tidy up the surroundings and work on our garden, our collective courtyard garden, and have a barbecue and give prizes and things like that. Among the most sought after or dreaded of the prizes is to be crowned the Trash Queen for the coming year. And one year I took it upon myself to do a little rendition of the particular Trash Queen, and that started a tradition. I didn't realize that was the case, but when I was told by the building manager that I had to come up with the one for the following year, I thought, oh God, what have I done? And so I started doing it. And one of the issues that I deal with is I'm not a portraitist. Not a portraitist. A-I-T-I-S-T. I'm not a portraitist. Well, that's the main one. I'm not a portraitist. And at one point I thought I would sort of step away from this post and let other people in my building who are portraitists pick up the mantle, but no one did, so now I'm way behind with my portraiture. And I started doing them again. I started trying to catch up. So there's a couple of rules I have to make it work. One is a frame, and one is a portrait style. Call it style. And what's the other one? Try to make it match the person. So the frames, I decided that in this gallery, right now there's 10 or 15, I don't know how many, all hung on the same wall. And some are in oval frames, some are rectangular, some are very ornate frames, some are long and skinny frames. And each frame, I can't have two frames that are alike. So that's one issue. So that's a challenge and sort of fun. Oops, I have to aim that to this thing. So I've been collecting frames throughout the years and putting them in a box, and they're called Trash Queen frames. So now I have to match up this frame with the correct queen. The style. What I mean by style is artistic style, yes. Well, that's sort of what I mean. And to match the person with the frame or the style or how I render them. There used to be a logic, but that has fallen apart. The first queen I depicted on a coin because queens and kings, some of the queens are men, by the way. The people, royalty is depicted on, what are these coins? I just told you, coins. Sometimes they're on stamps. Sometimes they're on money. These are the logical spots for them. So that was the first one I did. I didn't do a stamp for a few years, but I did a stamp at one point. When I did the money, it was for a specific person who was the treasurer of the Artist Association in my building. And it was really a fun little project because I was able to design the money. And the money was shaped like this. So it was sort of, the portrait was in the middle, so it was sort of shaped like a big eyeball. For whatever reason it was. I did have one queen that told me what she wanted, and she wanted her image on a mug, like a souvenir mug. So she's depicted here, and I didn't actually make a mug, I just photoshopped her picture on a mug, and it was a photo of a mug, and the mug contained art supplies rather than coffee or whatever. So paintbrushes and technical pens, fountain pens, and the like. So that was out of that mug. So these days, it is kind of a struggle to come up with matching all of these things. We're considering all of these things. We've got a frame, we've got the style of the way I draw it. Sometimes I draw in a doodly style, sometimes the realistic style, sometimes they're in color, sometimes black and white, and so the styles are all different. It sort of looks, what I'd like it to look like is if there were 20 pictures on the wall, that 20 different people drew them or created them. And so it's sort of fun. It makes it, here's my comfort level, here's my box I'm in, and I have to think outside of it. I have to come up with a new thing, which is a fun little challenge. And, you know, the more of these I do, the harder it is, in a way. So what I'll do is I will show you some examples of these finished products. And sometimes, you know, I get an idea, the light bulb goes off in my head. It's supposed to be a light bulb. And I run with it. Or in my case, I waddle kind of fast. I run with it and I produce it. Other times I get an idea and it sits in my brain and it stews and it gets stale, and sometimes it dies out. You know, it's past its expiration date and I have to throw it out and come up with a new idea. Sometimes it's like, you know, food with all sorts of preservatives that stays good until I actually do it. But these days, if I get an idea, I try to run with it, waddle with it as fast as I can, because when they do stick in my brain, the more I imagine what it's going to look like, the less likely it is to turn out the way I thought it was going to look like, because it's not fresh in my head. It turns out less interesting. So that's the plan. I try to attack it more quickly now. And what else was I going to say? I don't remember. But what I'll do is show you some examples of the portraits I've come up with, and I'll maybe you guys can give me some hints as to how I can do more of them. Always like hints. You can help me out here. Why am I drawing an arrow? I haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. This is a Waterman Taperite, by the way. This was in my collection, and I decided I can say goodbye to it. Goodbye. Goodbye, Waterman Taperite. I'm just dipped it here, which is why it's running out of ink. Come on, dip. I made sure the sack was working, and anyway, blah blah blah. So I'll show you the Trash Queens shortly. What a lovely pen this is. This is the Queen portrait I did for in 2007-2008 year, and Polly Pook was the treasurer, is still the treasurer of the Brickbottom Artists Association, so I put her mug on the iron certificate. And what else does it have here? Queen Polly. That's Madam Dr. Queen Pook to you. She has a doctorate in mathematics or something esoteric like that. There's this amazing brain in there. So I called her Madam Pook at one point, and she said that's Madam Dr. Pook. So now it's Madam Dr. Queen Pook to you. So Brickbottom is the name of our building, so that's the BB bug there. Just looking at this for the first time in a long, long time. The flip side of the bill is iron certificate. There's our buildings. It's a storm cloud with lightning bolts, and it says pennies from heaven, which has to do with her treasurer role, and you see the screws holding it all together, and this sort of looks like an eye. That was my intention. And I have to fix this because some of these dollars which were glued down have fallen off. So I get to fix this one. Now the back side of this, as you can see, is held together by spit and the grace of God. And as you can see, it's professionally framed. So I have to take these out and bend these back, take this out, and then re-glue it. Since I'm here, I'll show you the most recent one I did. I'll just show you a couple. God damn it. Since I have 3 of them here. The one I did yesterday is this one, Felice Trash Queen Y2K. And Felice, who is in a wheelchair, I show her popping wheelies in our courtyard, or meant to be the courtyard, and I confessed to her that she looks sort of like Where's Waldo in The Village Idiot put together, but that didn't bother her. I meant to show her big, beaming, smiling face. The snowflakes, I don't know if you can tell very easily here because of the reflection, but I've got about 6 layers of acetate, and each layer of snowflakes is smaller and smaller as they're placed behind the each other layer. So, oh, and why is it a snow globe, you ask? Well, Felice collects snow globes. So the Queen has this beautiful collection of snow globes. So that's this one. Okay. This one is for Peter Marquez. Sorry about that. And Peter Marquez, starring in Trash Queen 22. He was the 22nd Trash Queen, and he loves old movies. And there was a time when he would show old movies in our courtyard. So I made the Brickbottom Bijou Theater with his name in lights, as it were. Sometimes I don't essentially draw the image of the queen. As in this case here, Queen Dana takes the long view of the courtyard, and Dana is a fine furniture maker, so the frame I chose for her is this marquetry frame, and some of her furniture has inlaid patterns in it, decorative patterns. So Queen Dana is shown here sort of as a blueprint. She's looking out over the courtyard, and she takes the long view, meaning she doesn't expect the courtyard to look beautiful overnight. It may take years and years. So you see the birch trees growing, and you actually see what her view is. She's going to turn these into bookcases, chifforobe, end tables, and dressers. So she has a plan in her mind. So that's that one. And another recent one I did, which I have here. I had to take it out to scan it. Oops. So this is a frame that did not match any of the other frames I had. Now it has fingerprints, so I have to clean those off. Framing is a science. So this was a difficult one to do. It took me a while for the brain to latch onto this idea. But Queen Patsy is very much into the spiritual and things that people like me cannot see or appreciate, but people like her can. So she has some artwork that has titles called Mother Moon and Bird Goddess. So what I did was I created constellations with these things. So there's a bird with Avis Dei in Latin, and there's Luna Matram Suam, which I think is supposed to mean Mother Moon. Vostrum Regina Patsy, Trash Queen Patsy. So there's her figure there. And finally, Donum Dolce Donum, Home Sweet Home. And there's our buildings in the constellation. And I used this iridescent paper. It has a little metallic flecks in it for her image, because she uses iridescent paint in some of her work. And she gave a talk once about how she teaches life drawing, and she talks about gazinta. And gazinta was something that no one understood. It's like, what is that, Gestalt? What is that? What does that even mean? So I wrote it down, the Gazinta Observatory Plate MMXVII, which was, she was the 2018. So she was the Trash Queen this year, this last year. Gazinta is how she would teach how to get the proportions and the parts of the figure correct. And where is a pencil when I need it? So if you're drawing the figure, I don't have a figure in front of me, of course. Let's pretend it's a seated figure, and the legs are coming out here. They're sitting on their ass, and the arm is on the knee, and the other arm is on the ground, and there's the face, and whatever. Let's pretend that's what the figure is. Well, the Gazinta thing is the lines of the parts of the body travel through each other and sort of go into the other one. So goes into this. The arm goes into the leg. Goes into. And so you see that helps you draw the figure, helps you get the figure in the right orientation. Now sometimes they don't go into like this, sometimes they sort of are at right angles. That's not really a goes into, but that's how I draw. You know, this is a right angle, let's pretend. So I draw it that way. But goes into is a very good way of getting it to work the way you want it. So gazinta observatory. So these are the little personal jokes that I have with the sitter, just like this one. And sometimes they're personal, sometimes they are known by everyone in the building. But I try to include humor in the artwork that I do if I can, because the world is too full of tragedy and Sturm and Drang, and I don't have time for that. So there we go. Trash Queens. Another one of the Trash Queens at Brickbottom was a man named Duncan, and he volunteered to work on the courtyard under the previous queen. Our courtyard is quite beautiful, and it's all run volunteer, and the person who was sort of in charge of the courtyard at the time was a woman named Priscilla. And when Duncan volunteered, he said during his coronation that when he volunteered, he didn't realize he was signing up to be Priscilla's bitch. And was what he was, evidently, under her thumb and being told what to do left and right and center. So when he became queen, he said, "I'm nobody's bitch now." So Duncan is the COO, the coup, of Newbury Comics, the chief operating officer. And Newbury Comics is a retail store in Boston that everyone knows, and it sells, if there's a pie chart of what it sells, maybe this much of it is comic books. But comic books was it. And here's the logo, which showed this guy with a crown and this banner. So that was the inspiration for this image I came up with. And I have to reprint this because my fingerprint is on that, and that can't be. So the further adventures of Queen Duncan, and there he is. I'm nobody's bitch now. And that will go in this frame here. Very simple frame with a courtyard garden green color. And I'm going to try to make it look like it's an actual comic book. So I'm going to print it out, and I'll see if I can print it out on this semi-glossy material and have it folded where you'll see many pages, so it'll look like the cover. And I may alter it by adding a price sticker up here or something to make it look more like a comic book. So that's my plan. But the times I've been printing it out now, I get little specks and blobs coming out of my printer, so I have to figure out how to rectify that. This particular image, as you can see, was, or as you plainly can think it was done on the computer in Illustrator. So some of the artwork I do is not touched by human hands. It's done by computer, and sometimes it has my fingerprints all over it, or in this case, both. My fingerprint, which maybe makes sense that I should keep it there, but I do want it to be smaller and to fit in here like an actual book. So that's the plan. So wish me luck. I had to talk to my notes here. Another queen portrait I did had to do with a frame and a style, and the image I depicted matched the person. In this case, the frame I had was one of those long World War I era frames that showed a photograph of all the dead people. Well, they weren't dead when the photograph was taken, but they certainly were dead a few months later, almost all of them, where the regiment of soldiers were all lined up. Sometimes you see them in their company picnics, or they might be sports teams. But this frame I had a group of World War I era soldiers that were soon to become cannon fodder in the war to end all wars. So I took the picture out, and I had this long, skinny frame, which I turned on its side, so it was long and skinny vertically. And the queen in this case was Kate Chang. And as you can probably guess by the last name of Chang, there is some Asian blood in her veins. So I immediately thought of Chinese landscape painting and the very vertical mountains that you see in those paintings, and the mist and the fog and the sumi ink. And so I got out my little book, Chinese Art, and I also loved all of these little stamps that go along with them. And so, I looked at images like this with these great stylized mountains. In fact, I think this was the image I studied the most. In the foreground you have trees and a building, and in the background you have these huge towering mountains. And I chose this not only because of the Changiness of the last name, sorry Kate, the Asian heritage, but also Kate Chang was in charge of the composting here at Brickbottom. So the resulting image was this. So you see the Brickbottom buildings down there, and here are the railroad tracks that surround our building. And of course our building doesn't quite look like a pagoda like that, but in this case artistic license made that happen. And then you see these mountains, and they're taller and taller and taller and taller and taller. And there you see Kate at the very top of the compost pile. So these are compost piles, they're not mountains. So, and then I faux scripted in sort of loosey-goosey vertical script that sort of resembles some of the, not the careful characters, but the more poetic cursive-y stuff that you sometimes see in Oriental calligraphy. Sorry, I'm just trying to find an example of that, which I can't at the moment. But anyway, the other thing is these little stamps in red, the little chop marks, which show ownership and perhaps authorship in some cases, or both, or lots of different owners or whatever. So I had 3 stamps on this one. One of them, what does this mean? I this, by the way, the actual piece is 2 feet, 3 feet long. I just don't have a piece of paper that big. But when it's small like this, I can't see what the heck I did. So hold on one second. I don't know what that means. I think these are just fake. Sorry about that. But that's Brickbottom BB. I thought I made these mean something, but maybe it'll come to me. I don't see anything there that even suggests meaning. So anyway, Kate, Queen of Compost is what that says, if you can read it. So that's this one. This was one of the examples when I actually did talk to the recipient in advance to ask her whether this was okay. I wasn't sure on the scale of PC-dom whether, you know, this was PC or not PC. That is the question. You know, am I, you know, I'm not an Asian artist. Can I spoof Asian art for an Asian? You know, this is what I wasn't sure, and I asked her, and she said she loved it. I didn't tell her the full idea. I just said, do you mind if I do your portrait in the style of Chinese Sumi ink pictures? And she loved it. She's also one of the very few, in fact the only queen that we've had in the 20 queens or so, who was eager to become queen because of the portrait that she was going to have depicting her. Most people are sort of embarrassed by being a trash queen, but in her case it was not the case. In the case I showed you earlier with Felice doing wheelies in her wheelchair, when she was a queen, she was not in a wheelchair. And, you know, do I depict her then, or do I depict her now? Actually, here's one of my little quick sketches I was doing to sort of try to imagine how I was going to draw her. And in her case, I drew her. It was like when they had the Elvis stamp. Do you want the Elvis when he was young, or do you want the Elvis when he was popular? Well, he was popular both times, but do you want him when he was, you know, the Las Vegas version, or do you want the young version? And people wanted the young version for him rather than the older version. In Felice's case, though, she's such a dynamo in her wheelchair that I felt that that was a better way to depict her, and in the present rather than, you know, 20 years ago when she was actually the queen. 18 years ago, actually, she was the queen. So that's what I did. So these are all of the sort of fun things that I get to think about when I'm doing these portraiture things. And I'm not a portraitist, but these are the things, if I were a portraitist, this is what I would think about. And so I'm enjoying this little job. And I will continue to do it as long as I'm able, and as long as I find frames that are all different from one another, and the queens are different from one another. I've got some other ideas in my little head, and I'm going to try to put them on paper sooner than later, just because the fresher the idea is, I think the better it turns out. So wish me luck. I keep on telling you to wish me luck, but I mean that. Cross your fingers for me. This is the courtyard of our building, which, as you can see, is quite beautiful. It's a little oasis in this part of Somerville. We're surrounded by railroad tracks and rather ugly buildings, and this is quite a delight. And the Trash Queen portraits reside in here. And if I can get my key to open the door, I can show you. This was the first one I did in 2001, and Allison was the Trash Queen, and she's depicted on a sort of dime-like thing. Cleanliness is next to goodliness, and this one is Her Royal Highness Jerome, and the cancellation mark shows 2007, and there he is, Queen Jerome, on a stamp. Queen Ellen became this sort of Dr. Seussian piece. She has pet turtles that she brings out into the courtyard, so the turtle is carrying her in her contraption with all of the tools of queendom, and QE1, like the QE2, is Queen Ellen. Chris Misarch wanted to be depicted on a cup, so that's what this turned out to be. And she has a very sort of snobbish, haughty appearance. HRH Queen 2003 to 2004, and Queen Chris you see there. We shall be litter free in our time. Queen Bob is, his head was placed on top of Queen Victoria's statue. And here's Priscilla, whose bitch was Queen Duncan, and she had a little dog too. And this is, I turned her into a topiary, and she sort of walked at an angle, which you see me capturing here. Or maybe I'm just remembering her walking with an angle. And then the BB is the Brickbottom. And here is the Queen Kate image in reality. Oh, one more, sorry, forgot about Queen Randall. Here's an example where I sort of copied his artistic style. He creates silhouettes, and some of his silhouettes are bugs, so I sort of made him a bug. So you have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen sort of thing. It was with 6 legs coming out of the thorax part of the bug, and here you see QR, Queen Randall. He's cutting it out there, and this is a trash bag, that's a broom, that's a rake, that's a shovel, and it's framed in a sort of shadow box kind of frame. So that's it, and I'll put Polly Pook back there, and I'll add the other people over there, and soon we'll have to take that down and put that somewhere else, I guess, if I keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So there we go. And I also was a queen once upon a time. Though some people might think I'm still a queen. And I don't know how I'm going to do my portrait. That might be the last thing I'll do. But here's our realm again, the Brickbottom Courtyard, which is all volunteer, beautifully done by queens past and present, and lots of commoners. Though the more years we are here, the fewer commoners we have, because we're all royalty.